let's talk about the Korea-China relationship, because of course there's a bunch of cross-border activity, right? On the one hand, there's refugees that have come across and get forcibly repatriated. We've heard about that. There's that whole, kind of sex work industry, which Yeonmi Park exposed to some extent. Then there's legitimate people that are officially working outside. I think you've told me there's 100,000 of those. Yep. This border closure kept them on one end, even though they don't have visas. There's all these complications, right? Yep. And then on top of that, there's also IT workers that the regime is cultivating to place in companies outside for all sorts of reasons, partially for nefarious reasons of their own, right? As opposed to just sort of making money outside the country. So if you can kind of break that down, to summarize, there's not a lot of people go out of the country, but some do. And most of them end up in China, the ones that can go back and forth. So give me the sense of the reality.
Since the pandemic, North Korean regime intentionally closed the border from January 2020 until now. I would say that they intentionally closed the border because of some benefit. And it's not the benefit for people. It's the benefit for Kim Jong-un himself. In the past, we conducted business with China, and there are lots of byproducts, and people get the benefit from this business. Even though most of the money were extracted by the regime, but still the people are involved in the industry getting money from making money from the business. But now it is total closure, and Kim Jong-un only get money from those people outside North Korea, which we call them as slave workers. And they are all officially dispatched from the North Korean regime. And I would say 100,000 people are working in China. And because of the visa status, they are all illegally working in China. And the UN Security Council resolution in 2017 told every country, the UN members should send back all North Korean workers to North Korea, because those monies are exclusively contribute to North Korea's nuclear and weapon programs. But China didn't follow the rules, didn't did their responsibility as a responsible nation, and especially China is the board member of the National Security Council, right? But North Korea knows that if they close the border, China cannot send the North Korean workers back to North Korea. So let them keep in China, let them making millions of dollars every year, regardless of their willingness. So many people, the workers, sent information and letters, even wrote handwritten letters to us and other people that we want to go back because we want to see my family. For 3 years, 4 years, they couldn't see their families, and even they worked so hard, 12 hours, 14 hours, without any proper conditions. They couldn't earn money because the regime kept all the money, and they said that when you go back to North Korea, we will give it to you. But none of them kept the money they made. They only got a small portion of the money. So most of the workers inside China now, the North Korean workers, very frustrated, and they want to defect. It's very similar situation with the IT workers as well. They are highly trained and then skillful people. They make millions of dollars every year hacking cryptocurrency and hacking banks. And also they are doing outsourcing work. They are making websites, they are making animations for the different companies. Especially, I heard recently that most of their clients are from the US, and the clients in the US couldn't even know they are North Korean, IT workers, because there are a number of different involvement, and as a fake ID and fake
Shell companies and so forth,
in
right?
Hong Kong and outside. So, yeah.
And what about the refugees? There's actually people who have escaped, right? Who ended up in China, or and there's also these sex workers, which I understand there's that whole kind of dark human trafficking industry as well.
I didn't realize until I defect about the sex workers. Because of the information isolation, those information couldn't reach us when I was in North Korea. I learned after I defect, and it's very heartbreaking, and especially Yeonmi's story and the suffering she went through, it's unimaginable. And I would say it's not just Yeonmi, there are thousands of people are in the same situation right now. During the famine, many North Korean escapees left North Korea and settled down in China. Of course, they don't have any identification. They couldn't register their ID in China. They are illegally living with their Chinese families. So many of them were originally sold as a sex worker and then as a slave, but some women married to Chinese people, they gave a birth. But now, several months ago, Chinese authorities rigorously looking for those people and arrest them and try to send back to North Korea. And even some Chinese police get bribery and release them, and 1 month later, and 1 or several months later, to just arrest again. And the families are obviously frustrated this situation. They have children, 2 or 3. And what if the moms repatriated to North Korea and couldn't see their families in the future? And that's the two countries are doing to its own people. And also, there are 2 types of escapees in China. Those people who escape North Korea because of the economic situation. And also those people who work as the workers or officials in China, and they were captured by the Chinese police during their escape.
So these are, just to be clear, these are people that were, they're in China already, and then they kind of escape, but then they're captured by the Chinese authorities.
Yes. Okay. So recently, many the IT workers and North Korean workers are sick of North Korean regime, and they tried to escape, and many of them almost, succeed of the escape, but the Chinese authorities arrest them, and they keep, interrogate them, and they keep them in the detention center, and now they are ready to send them back if the border is reopened.
And they're resending them to they're trying to escape to South Korea, is that right?
Most of them were trying to escape to South Korea.
The one line from this BBC documentary, and I thank you for sharing that with me, that really hit home is, the woman says, I want to be in a society where we don't have to spy on each other.
That's actually a very sad thing. The totalitarian and authoritarian society, they share a similar feature that, let people spying on each other and reporting each other so that the regime get the benefit and punish people because of their action, fantasizing the Western culture. For example, your neighbors can be a spy for your family, and if your family express dissent or disagreement with the regime, that just one word could be delivered by your neighbor to the Workers' Party, the ruling party, and because of that word and because of that action, your entire family could be in political prison camp.
And I just want to jump in. So with these prison camps, and I still find this incredibly mind-blowing, difficult to fathom, but it's not just necessarily the people there. It could be 3 generations of people.
Yes, of
Right.
course. So that is the most notorious system in North Korea. It's guilty by association system, and which means that your 3 generation has to be punished in that system. And if your grandfather become a traitor of the nation, and your son, your grandson, must live in the political prison camp. And I heard that even those babies were born in the political prison camp have to spend their whole life in political prison camp. And actually in 2010, my neighbor, the entire family were imprisoned in political prison camp. He was the political ambassador in Beijing, and his charge was just several meetings with the Kim Jong-un's half-brother. And later we found out that entire family vanished, and our neighbor told us that even their children, the grandchildren, were sent to the political prison camp. So they have 4 children, and then they have all grandchildren, and then even the 3rd son's child is only 2 years old. 2 years old baby also sent to political prison camp. Only survivor was that family. Was the little 5 years old girl of the daughter's granddaughter, which means that she has a different last name. Because of that, the regime forcefully divorced the daughter and then the son-in-law, and then the daughter kept the son-in-law's last name. That's why she can be a survivor of the entire family. Other than that, whole family is sent to the political prison camp. That happened a lot, and we assume that there are 200,000 people are imprisoned in political prison camp. 90% of them are from the elite class. North Korean regime don't put just the general public in the facility. They put elite members who used to be loyal to the country. Most of them are political victims of the regime, but the regime think that they are the threat to the regime.
How does the North Korean economy work even?
Its economy is already broken. It's already collapsed. But the people made their own life through market activity. In the low level, like the domestic level, they already achieved the market system. But its top level, when it comes to top level, the regime can procure money from the resources like labor workers, IT workers, and then nowadays gold smuggling. So we couldn't even call its economy. It's more like one gang, leader just making his money and giving some money and distributing some money with the its own clan.
So the rest is basically just people effectively functioning on a black market of sorts. So when analysts say that the regime is highly dependent on money from China, are they talking about these IT workers, all these different workers, all this money coming in that, or is there some other source of money as well?
Before the pandemic, the most trade was we conducted trade through China. It's almost 90%. When the analysts say that the reliance on China is the import and export. So North Korean regime sell the natural resources to China, and then they got the materials from China. So that makes like import and export. So China had a wider market than Russia, and Kim Jong-un didn't like China, but he actually gave all the business people order, many years ago that, we want to utilize Russian market more than Chinese market, and then we thought that, Kim Jong-un was crazy, and then there's nothing we can trade with Russia at the moment. So when we do business between North Korea and China, they're mostly involved with front money. So Chinese investors, Chinese business people put money first so that they can get the resources from North Korea. The Chinese regime obviously support North Korean regime. They provide the crude oil, refined oil every year, and then let North Korean regime conduct smugglings, everything, for the survival of the regime. They don't want North Korean regime to be collapsed. But what I'm saying is trade, and then there's generally Chinese business people think that they can make money through the business. Actually, they made a lot of business. North Korea has natural resources, so they get the natural resources from North Korea at very low price. That the price gap made them make a lot of money.
So here, in DC, where you've decided to live, what do you see as a future here for North Koreans, for yourself?
I'm currently working as a fellow at nonprofit, and I consulted a lot of North Korea policy to the government agencies. And the reason I was involved in that industry because I think the policy is important, and I found out that in 2016 that not many people have accurate view on North Korea. So I want to share the accurate views and give more information so that they can make a right policy. Soon I'll be studying at Columbia University for public administration. So the reason I pursue this career because I want to be more effective policymaker and policy influencer. So one day, I hopefully, the U.S. policy and international policy can make a change of North Korea.
Very broad strokes here. What do you think it would be the right policy for the U.S.?
The right policy would be focusing on changing the society, because the U.S. international community couldn't reach the goal of democratization and improving human rights. The top problem is the system and the leader. We are afraid to say that changing the regime, but we should encourage the people inside to change their lives and giving more objective information, give truth to the people so that they can decide what they want. Now, the people inside North Korea, they couldn't get their own decision. It's all drafted by the regime. It's the only voice of the regime, not the voice of the people. I've lived in North Korea 29 years, and I also experienced in China. And I can guarantee that the totalitarian system and dictatorship and authoritarian regime is a totally different system and a totally different ideology.
I often talk to people about China's policy, the Chinese Communist Party's policy of comprehensive national power. The summary of it is they don't believe in win-win relationships. It can only be I win, you lose. If it's even, then I'm losing. That's not acceptable.
It's the same policy with China as well. You lose, I win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's people in America who are concerned, right, about too much U.S. attempting to intervene in other places. They point to some failed policies. They point to, in some cases it looks like it was much more self-interested, right, than helping people outside. And they worry about that. They worry about, calling for America to try to intervene in other places. So what do you say to people that are thinking that way?
At some point, I agree with them. America should focus on their own policy and focus on its people. But the Korea issue and some issues around the world are directly impact the U.S. national security and U.S. policies. Especially the Korean Peninsula issue was long unresolving issue for America from 1950s. And actually, I don't see any hope if there is no U.S. involvement. And I'm not saying that this direct involvement, but I want U.S. policymakers and U.S. people to give North Korean people a chance to change their society. I lived in the 4 different countries, North Korea, China, South Korea, and United States. I learned that the U.S. is the best among 4. I know many people criticize United States, even they don't believe in their society because of the different policies and divisions, but still it's the best country I've experienced, and the core value of this society is the individual freedom and the democracy. Even though they argue, they debate, but this country has the best system so far. So I have hope for the North Korean regime. And I think it eventually helped the society.
You know, you just reminded me of, I was in listening in a Twitter space where Elon Musk was interviewing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Actually, for some of it, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was interviewing Elon Musk. That's how I viewed it. Mm-hmm. But Elon Musk said something along your lines here, where he mentioned, what other nation would have, after World War II, would have built, Germany, built Japan, these countries which were the sort of prime aggressors, right, in the war. They put billions and billions of dollars in, and goodwill. I thought it was a very interesting answer why he believes America is a good nation, right, with all its flaws.
Yep.
Sometimes when I talk about communist China, I'll talk about certain policies, certain realities over there. Even just recently, encroachments on freedom in Hong Kong, like how that society has totally changed. Mm-hmm. People say, well, we do the same thing here in America, right? And I have to say, I always say, no, it's not the same. Even though there might be some similarity, mm-hmm. right? But sometimes I find it difficult to explain that to people.
It would be sad if we see the same situation in the society like America. But from my observation, I think there are many differences. For example, if I criticize leader of North Korea in North Korean society, I could be destroyed, and entire my family could be destroyed because of that one word. But in the United States, still there's some protection system, and then there's some platforms you share, and people can trust or support you. And it's the same thing with North Korea as well in China. In Chinese system, if you against the Chinese policy, the leader's policy, and you could be immediately removed from the society, and you could face a lot of punishment by the authorities. But in the United States, I would say still I think the foundation of the system and then the punishment system is a lot different. And I believe that the U.S. shouldn't go in that direction. Ultimately, the freedom of expression is what creates people to be liberated in mindset. So
this has been such a remarkable conversation. Learned a lot. Any final thoughts as we finish?
I hope that American people should respect the society, because many people in the world think that still America is the best. the freedom they have cannot be compared to the other nations. And I have to say that the American people should keep their freedom and then keep the national pride for its citizens and the world.
Well, Arthur Lee, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It's my privilege to talk with you and share my thoughts.
Thank you all for joining Arthur Lee and me on this episode of American Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Yanya Kellick.